Hello, welcome back to All for United WFC. Manchester United have announced Elisabeth Terland. I could not be happier. For those of you who would have seen my tweets and my shows and everything else, I said I want 2 dream signings this summer. Melvin Mallard, Elisabeth Terland. Both of them are Manchester United players, and I am amazed by it. I'm joined by fellow Connor, as you can see, a person who told me about Elisabeth Terland long before she came to WSL as one of the players to keep an eye on. So had to get Phil on to talk all about her. She's still relatively young. She's only 22, and she's Terland, so lots of potential there. Phil, welcome to the channel again. I can't remember when you last came on, but I don't think it was that long. I think you've been on quite recently.
I think we were there towards the end of last season, all right, which was around probably before the FA Cup final anyway, we were on there. But great to be back on again, and great to be back on after the Phil Stradamus piece there, where I told you that Terland was one of the players that you would need to be keeping an eye on, and now all of a sudden she is a Manchester United player. So it's always great to, when you see, when you tip somebody like yourself off about a player and say keep an eye on her, and then she comes to your club. It's a magnificent feeling altogether to see her sign for United today.
No, absolutely. I'll start with that question in terms of just your thoughts on it, because she was, I was a bit surprised when I'd heard the talk that she was coming to United. She was heavily linked to a lot of other clubs. There was obviously a lot of options for her. I think leaving Brighton, was on the cards, but I was always convinced she'd go to a big Champions League side. Just your initial thoughts on it when you saw that she was coming to United, and now that it's confirmed.
Yeah, to be honest, it's quite strange, Connor, because, Manchester United is one of the biggest clubs in the world, but we know the problems that there have been over the last season. But last season was a little bit, in terms of the league anyway, and in terms of some of the decisions the club made, they weren't great. And we've talked often, both privately and here on the channel, about how Manchester United has treated some of our favourite Scandinavian players, the way Vilde Borg-Riise left the club, the way Maria Thorstvedt left the club. It wasn't great kind of thing. And I was sort of saying that maybe that might prevent Norwegian and Swedish players and Danish players looking at Manchester United as a viable alternative. And I'd love to know, and it would be great to see when Elisabeth has a chance to speak to the fans and to speak to journalists about exactly why she chose the club. I think she's chosen very wisely, right? Because at this point in her career, she's 22, 23 years of age, she's had a really good season at Brighton. It was one of those things that, literally, not the only Brighton player that was ever talked about, but she was in every story about Brighton, how her career was going. I think she had 13 WSL goals last year, and she's ready for the next step. And I think the important thing for Elisabeth was, don't make that step too big, right? So if you go to an Arsenal or a Chelsea where they have 50 other players who play in the same position as you, you're not going to get to keep developing. And I don't care how much you play in training and how good the defenders are and all that kind of thing. Don't care about any of that. You need to be playing competitive games against other good players. And I think her season in Brighton has certainly proved that, because she was playing with very good players, among them Gudo Beisvan and Maria Thorstvedt at the back there for Brighton. And she really has come on a lot, and I do think that this is a very important stage in her development now, and I really hope that Manchester United's ambition is at the same level and at the same pace and in the same place as Elisabeth's, because if she signs now, it'll be maybe 2 years or 3 years. I'm not exactly sure what the structure of the deal is going to be, but I really hope that this is not just 2 years and then she moves on to a PSG or a Lyon or a Chelsea or a Barcelona or whoever else. I really hope that she can be in Manchester for the long term.
No, that's going to be the key. And I think, when you look at the age of a lot of our players, Emma Watson, young Clinton, to a point, May Letizia, Jay Riviere, these are young players now, Terland, Mallard as well, all under the age of 25. I think it's building a good squad for now, but it's also for the future as well. I'm with you. I was surprised at the start that she would choose United, but I also think at the point in her career, as you mentioned, 23 years old, she can afford to take that jump from Brighton to United, and then if it doesn't work out in 2-3 years, she can then make another jump, because she's only going to be 25, 26, so she can make another jump potentially there as well. Having watched her obviously with Norway, obviously before she came to WSL and at Brighton, where would you, say, her best position is? Because we've kind of seen her a little bit out on the wide areas. Predominantly, she's played down the middle as well. Would you say she's a proper number 9? Would you like to see her a little bit more out wide? Where would you kind of put her there?
Oh, okay, so any coach that puts Elisabeth Terland on the wing needs to be sacked in the morning, right? She is a classic number 9. That's just the kind of player that she is. I mean, she can do other things. Most good centre forwards can play a little bit on the wing. They don't like doing it. And I think by far her best position is just as a striker through the middle. I think that she would be very good in a sort of a 4-2-3-1 as a lone striker through the middle, and let the other sort of midfielders create the opportunities for her. What really stands out about her to me me at the age of 22, 23, Connor, is her finishing and the speed at which she finishes, right? She's a great header of the ball. She's a fantastic and a very powerful right foot. She'll hit anything that falls on her left. I love to see that in a striker. So if you go back over the goals that she scored for Brighton last year, 1-2 touches to set her up, or it was a first-time finish straight away. And that to me that's going to cover a multitude of things that maybe United need covering next year, right? Just getting the ball into the box and having a player like that in there who doesn't need, 15 touches to get the ball correctly under her feet, who could just hit anything and in it goes, Her strength from set pieces is tremendous. I still cannot believe how anybody can let her just waltz around the box. She's a great woman to go to the near post and just head a corner in there. And if she doesn't head it directly on goal, she can often cause trouble, So your centre backs coming up will pick up a sort of a flick on or that kind of thing from her as well if she can't get it on goal herself. I really think though that if you're buying her and thinking that you're going to put her out in a wing, you're wasting your money. Or if you're going to pay her a decent wage and bring her to Manchester and get her a car and somewhere to live, wasting your money. Let her play through the middle. And when she's allowed to do that, as she did with Brann Berrien in Norway, and as she's been allowed to do a lot of the time at Brighton Hove Albion, she will average about a goal every other game. I think it's just less than a goal every other game. And Brann were a very good team in Norway when she were there. They were probably the top team when she was there, probably the top team in Norway at that time. But the service I would expect her to get at a club like Manchester United, I would be hoping to see her be up around the 18, 19 goals a season. I don't think that's out of the question. I think she would be up there with the likes of Bunny Shaw when it comes to the top scorer next season. She certainly has that potential. But to do that, you have to get her the ball and you have to get it in the right places, So, but the other thing about her is that she can do pretty much everything, right? So crosses into the box, she can deal with. Long balls over the top, she can deal with. Set pieces, she can deal with. And that really is a tremendous asset because a club like United, if we look at them in the hierarchy of the Women's Super League, Elisabeth got a lot of goals against Leicester last year. She got a lot of goals against Bristol City last year, but she also got goals against the bigger clubs. And that means that you can change the way you play the game and she's still going to deliver. So if you have Manchester United playing against an Arsenal or a Man City, for example, you might want to soak up a little bit of pressure, but the outlet is always there for her to get on the ball. And it doesn't take much. Again, she's so direct when she gets on those long balls. She has the pace to get in behind people. And the one thing that's underestimated about her is her physical strength, right? It's very difficult to knock her off the ball. And that's why I think of all the bits of business that United are going to do this summer, I think this is the most important because of the fact that she would give you so much compared to what you're going to invest just to get her out in the field.
I've got visions of you talking about running in behind, and obviously for people who know, we signed Dominique Janssen earlier in the window, and that her long passing over the top, and we already know May Letizia loves that pinged ball over the top. I've just got visions of Terland running in behind, and Janssen in particular, that long ball over the top, the kind of direct approach. Maybe that's Mallard off the left or Jace off the right, whatever it is. I could definitely see that being a system that we utilize. That's what I want to see anyway. I want to see Mallard off the left and turn down the middle. I don't want to see it the other way around, albeit Mallard is a very, very top tier number 9 as well. You don't get in that side at Lyon for if you're not a top tier forward, but I will add her best season was off the left. So I think they can play together. Terland down the middle, Mallard off the left.
But I think you make a very valid point there, Conor, and this is very, very important in terms of the players that you bring in, right? Just because a player can play somewhere doesn't mean that they should play somewhere, right? And we've just seen a men's Euros where basically somebody was saying to me at the finals of the men's Euros there recently that, all Spain did was they picked their best players in their best positions. And there's so much in coaching today now where you go, could you play this right-footed player at left back? Or, it happens in the national team with Tuva Hansen for Norway, and they insist on playing her as a right-footed left back. I don't think it's ever worked. I think it cost them hugely. It's not that Tuva is not good enough to play at left back. She's absolutely good enough. But the fact that she wants to go back on her right foot, it kills everything that they tried to build up on the left-hand side, So in that way, then, I think that Mallard is much more flexible. I think she has a sort of a broader register of skills, right? In terms of, being on the ball and being able to dictate the tempo. I think that Elisabeth, that direct threat that you have there, the further you move her from goal, the more you are watering down your own attack, right? So with Mallard, it's not the same thing. She can do those sort of take on those different roles in the attack. You look at some attacking midfielders and they can play anywhere across the front line or in the wings or as a number 10, as a number 9. Mallard's kind of like that. I just think that Elisabeth is you will get the most out of her by playing there through the middle, and I really hope that that's the plan for her at Manchester United.
No, I agree. I mean, we saw it in the games that we played against Brighton last season, particularly the game in the league at LSV. I remember Mary had to pull off a really good save from Terland, kind of that direct approach down the middle, split our centre half. So Mary pulled off a really good save at that point. to deny her. I just want to ask you a little bit in terms of it's hard to predict, obviously, her future and her potential and things like that. Potential is always a really tough one to judge, especially with injuries and things like that can affect these things. How high do you reckon her ceiling is? Because at the moment, I think she was spoken about in 2022. I think she was on a list that UEFA did of like top 10 players to keep an eye on, and things like that. We know there's a lot of hype around her, obviously being young as well. She scored, I think she was the third top scorer in the WSL last season, behind James and obviously Bunny Shaw as well up there. How high do you think her ceiling potentially is if she hits the ground running with United next season?
I think if she can stay injury free and if she can stay fit in a good functioning United team, and I mean that both on and off the pitch, if you can have a good sort of team spirit in United where people are looking at an assist for Elisabeth Terland is just as much value as a goal for me as a winger or as an attacking midfielder, right? If you can get that kind of thing instilled in Manchester United, I think her ceiling is very, very high indeed. I think she could be one of the top strikers, not just in England, but in Europe if she gets those chances. Because of the fact that her game is so simple and yet so effective, it is based on that pace and power, but also that finishing skill that she brings to it, you know? And whereas an injury might slow her down just a little bit, the instinct that she has to be in the right place at the right time that's just, you know, that's worth its weight in gold. You'll see an awful lot of centre forwards, especially in a league like the Women's Super League, who are kind of waiting on a defender's mistake, right? So a girl who'll hide behind both the centre backs and hope that their header will just sort of skim off them and it'll drop to her and she'll stick it in the back of the net, right? Elisabeth doesn't do that. She finds herself into positions where she gets in ahead of the centre backs when that ball comes in there and just bullets it past the goalkeeper. Very brave player. I think she's a very intelligent player, and I think that that's what will give her the longevity that she's going to need if she really is to reach that potential. Again, there is that thing though, it's so hard to say at this point in time, and we've been talking about it for years on this channel now, about ACL injuries, about soft muscle tissue injuries, about those kinds of things. I don't know of anything now. She's had a few injuries in the past, but nothing that I would say is absolutely major, you know. So if she can get a good run of, you know, the 20 odd league games there, of the Conti Cup games, there's no Europe this year unfortunately for Manchester United, where I see a potential for development for her would be in the national team. But there's so many other players in there with Gemma Grange at the moment. Oda Hegerberg will be back. Karina Sævik is back in Norway now and doing quite well at Vålerenga, and she's quite well sort of trusted there. Elisabeth got on, I think, at the last game that I saw last week or 2 weeks ago there. I can't even remember who they were playing now. I've watched so much football in recent weeks that it's all just turned into one big match. But Elisabeth is, if she can stay involved in the national team, stay fit enough, not need a break, not need any rehab during that time, I think she'll learn an awful lot from playing with Caroline Grom Hansen, from playing with Guro Reiten, from being around Oda Hegerberg and Sævik and that kind of player, Frida Monen from Arsenal as well. Playing with that kind of player, I think will be developmental. But I think the jewel in the crown for her will be as all the sort of is phased out in 2 or 3 or 4 years time and maybe becomes more of a talisman than a first choice striker. And then for Elisabeth to be able to shoulder that mantle, that's really where I think that, you know, she could reach her true potential, which I believe to be very, very high indeed.
No, absolutely. And I think my two kind of final questions a little bit there, you make reference obviously to the Norway team. And I think when you're looking at players to learn off, you know, Ada obviously is a big one. But I also, and before I say this, I'm not comparing Rachel Williams and Hegerberg for 1 minute, but I also do think that she can learn a lot off a player like Rachel Williams at United, then obviously with Norway squad as well. Obviously with Ada there as well, and Graham Hansen and Wright and the other players that you've mentioned. Where would you say her? Who would you think she's going to link up well with at United? Obviously, we've seen her for Norway and Brighton and things like that. What kind of players do you think she needs around her to get the kind of best out of her? You've mentioned obviously playing her down the middle will get the best out of her, but what do you think she needs around her to kind of really elevate that level?
I think rather than naming names, Connor, let's name characteristics of what you want to see, right? What I absolutely do not want to see is a winger who takes the ball to the corner flag and then does 15 step overs and the ball goes out for a goal kick, right? The way you get the most out of a player like Terland, and the same goes for attacking midfielders as well, the kind of midfielder who sort of runs at the centre half and then turns back and gives it to their number 6 or whatever, don't need to see that either, right? What you need to see is what the Spanish are now calling vertical football, right? Which is getting the ball, retaining possession of the ball, because possession is everything in the world of the Women's Super League, right? But getting it into attacking positions quickly, right? That's not risking the ball. It's not playing a 50-50 ball just over the top for Terland to chase. It's playing it into a channel where she can get to, right? And if I take this on the model team for doing that at the moment, in my estimation, is BK Häcken in Sweden, who got all the way to, were they in the semi-finals of the Champions League, the quarterfinals of the Champions League last year? Did really well by playing those slightly longer balls to Clarissa Larissi from Canada, right? But they played them in a way that it wasn't just a hit and hope kind of thing. It was, okay, we're going to hit this space between the fullback and the centre-back. We're going to make them make a choice who's going to run after it, because our centre-forward is going to be on it. You mentioned Maya Letitia there. I think that's a really, really good shout, right? Because that's going to be the first thing. And it's also going to give the rest of the United team a chance to move up and to compress and to make it difficult for when they do lose the ball. So I would say what I'd like to see with her is two intelligent wide players who tend to stay wide, right? We have this trend at the moment of playing right-footed players on the left-footed players on the right. I don't really care too much for that in terms of Elisabeth Terland. I would like to see a left-footed player get to the left side byline and put the ball into the box for her. The same thing on the right. You can always swap them around. But intelligent footballers who release the ball early, right? Because there's nothing more frustrating for a traditional number 9, a traditional centre-forward, than making your run and not getting the ball. And what happens after that is you will do that 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, 7 times in the game. And eventually, if you don't get the ball, you just stop. And that's when you see this static stuff. Like Maria Torres-Dotter, her dad is a handball coach. And the ball just goes around and around and around. And eventually somebody takes a shot because they're not allowed it to go into the area near the goal. That's the way Olympic handball works. And when that happens in football, it's very, very difficult to score. And we will see teams coming up. We will see the teams at the bottom of the Women's Super League again this year. They will play a low block. It will be hard to break down. And the way you beat that is by not letting them get into position. And the ball travels much further than any winger or any attacking midfielder ever can, right? It travels much further, much quicker. So by playing that ball into Terland and giving her the chance then to get that defense turned, I think that's how to get the most out of her. So people who like to play quick balls into her, whether it to be to her head or her feet, they're the kind of players you want to surround her with now in Manchester United.
No, absolutely. I definitely think even some of the youngsters coming through, the Watsons and Clintons and these types of players, I think will definitely elevate that with the current crop of players we've got there. My kind of final question, I'll do this on all the player profiles. If you could rate the signing out of 10 from a club point of view and from a player point of view, where would you put this signing?
I would put this signing at a strong 8 out of 10 at the moment, right? I would hope that if you talk to me on this day next year, when we're celebrating 1 year of Elisabeth Terland, the new top scorer in the WSL, that I can give a 10 out of 10. It has the potential to be a 10 out of 10 signing. I mean, I'm not over-egging the omelette here when I say this is a brilliant piece of business by Manchester United. And I honestly did not believe, Conor, that they were going to be able to pull this off, but they've done it. Now that they've done that, that's only the first part of it, right? The next part of it is surrounding her with those intelligent players and playing the kind of football that's going to get the most out of her. Because if they don't do that, then it's going to remain an 8 out of 10. Maybe in a year's time, it'll be a 7 out of 10. And we'll be sitting there talking about what might have been as she goes off to, Atletico Madrid or something and really sort of wants to get European football or that. But it has a potential to be a 10 out of 10 sign-up. We'll tick the 8 box for now, and you can call me up in a year's time. We'll see where we are then.
No, I tend to agree with that. I think, well, for me, it's an 11 just because I wanted her at United so bad that I'm just hyped anyway. But I really hope what you say there comes to fruition. And obviously, that if she can hit the numbers that she hit at Brighton at 13 in the league, if she can get to maybe 15 in the league, I mean, to be fair, I always say from a forward to get to double digits and then go from there. Because to be honest, I don't know what United we're going to see next season, but we'll see what the rest of the transfer window brings. It's going to be a big
season. Well, I'll tell you something for another. We may not know what United we're going to see, but we're certainly going to watch now that Elisabeth is playing up front there.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just so happy. Look, I say this with Vilda. I know we're gonna hop off in a second, but as people know, obviously our connection, mine and Phil, started because of Vilda Borisa and obviously the links to United. And I just remember all that time ago we did a show with yourself. We were talking about hidden gems. I might find it actually, try and find the clip of that. And we were talking about hidden gems in Scandinavia, who to look out for, and Terland was on that list. So that's one moved across 2 years later.
There you go. It was fascinating, actually, Conor. If we could just talk about men's football for 1 second. Ireland just appointed Heima Hallgrímsson as the national team manager. And 6 years ago, in November 2018, I suggested that the FAI talk to him. So I have a reputation here with the Scandies.
See, there we go. See, we're onto something here, me and Phil. Exactly. Get your commission and all sorts. Make sure you're following Phil. I'll leave his Twitter and all kinds of things in the description because I'm sure you're working on a lot. You always are. Whenever I speak to you, you got a lot on. So make sure you're doing all that, liking the video, subscribing, all of that good stuff. And we shall see you guys in the next one.